A thread by Carlos Osuita. I just found the perfect illustration of what I've been telling you. There is no science, only scientists. Share this far and wide for President Trump and the First Lady. From getpocket.com, Phineas Gage, neuroscience's most famous patient. I read about Phineas Gage when I was a child. His head was completely pierced through and through by an iron rod, a tool used to pack explosives into a hole drilled into rock. The Rutland and Burlington Railroad was clearing a passage for new tracks the accident happened. The story I read, and which is told by every neuroscientist, is that Gage's frontal lobes were destroyed, changing him from a normal man to a raging alcoholic sociopath. But, from the article, quote, his is the most famous name in neuroscience. How ironic, then, that we know so little else about the man, and that much of what we think we know, especially about his life unraveling after his accident, is probably bunk. When Gage's frontal lobes got pulped, he transformed from a clean-cut, virtuous foreman into a dirty, scary, sociopathic drifter. Simple as that. This story has had a huge influence on the scientific and popular understanding of the brain. Most uncomfortably, it implies that whenever people suffer grave damage to the frontal lobes, as soldiers might, or victims of strokes or Alzheimer's disease, something essentially human can vanish. Recent historical work, however, suggests that much of the canonical Gage story is hogwash, a melange of scientific prejudice, artistic license, and outright fabrication. People butcher history all the time, of course, for various reasons, but something distinct seems to have happened with Gage. Macmillan calls it scientific license. When you look at the stories told about Phineas, he says, you get the impression that scientists are indulging in something like poetic license to make the story more vivid, to make it fit with their preconceptions. Science historian Douglas Allchin has noticed the power of preconceptions as well. While the stories in science are all about history, events that happened, Allchin writes, they sometimes drift into stories of what should have happened. If repeated often enough, such stories acquire an air of truthiness. And once you have a myth of any kind, scientific or otherwise, Macmillan says, it's damn near impossible to get it destroyed. Macmillan especially bemoans the degree of rigor mortis in textbooks, which reach a large, impressionable audience and repeat the same anecdotes about Gage in edition after edition. Textbook writers are a lazy lot, he says. If nothing else, Macmillan says, Phineas's story is worth remembering because it illustrates how easily a small stock of facts can be transformed into popular and scientific myth. End quote. Who is the only person deeply involved in COVID-19 not suffering from any kind of preconception, bias, or myth making? President Donald John Trump. There is no science, only scientists. Trump had to rely on deeply flawed people to tell him the unvarnished truth, and they were incapable. You want someone to blame? Then you need to blame scientists. Personally, I'm not blaming them, only the Chinese. They get all the blame for this. And now, let's sit back and laugh at the leftists, whom I block one after another. Get better soon, President Trump and First Lady Trump. We know you'll be fine. We're all in this together.